What have you made of the developments over the past 24 hours?
Well, I think it raises more questions than it answers, Tom. I mean, I'm unsure as to really whether there has been a commitment to net zero emissions by 2050 from the Nats. They still talk about not wanting to describe it as a target. We've got no idea as to what the price has been paid here by Scott Morrison.
We might find that out soon.
Well, we certainly don't know now. One hopes we do find out exactly what has been provided to the Nationals in all of this. But I think the one thing that we have learned is that the person calling the shots in this government is Barnaby Joyce. He's the ringmaster. He is the person whose tune Scott Morrison is dancing to.
Is that true, that Barnaby Joyce is personally opposed to this, from what we understand, and it's still happening? And he also recognised the PM ultimately has authority along with Cabinet.
We have all been watching the circus, which is the National Party, including Scott Morrison. I mean, Scott Morrison's been watching it as well. This is not a Prime Minister who is providing leadership. This is not a Prime Minister who is in charge. And here we are within a week of Glasgow, of the Prime Minister going to the COP meeting, and it's still not clear whether or not his whole government, his Deputy Prime Minister, is actually committed to net zero by 2050.
Well, he says he's committed. He says that's what the party room says, that's what the party's going with.
But there's a whole lot of weasel words around whether we're talking about whether this is an aspiration, whether they hope to get there, what this actually means. And as I say, we don't know what the price is. So to me, there's a whole lot of questions that are being raised here. We don't have the answers to them. But what we do know is that the person who's calling the shots here is Barnaby Joyce.
The price spoken about is in terms of regions. What Barnaby Joyce said is we've made a deal to make sure the regions are better off and never worse off. Is that a position you agree with?
Well, the regional Australia needs to make sure that we have a strong economy, and moving to a position of net zero emissions by 2050 is how we do that. Because unless we're doing that, we risk the country being left behind. You know, I live in regional Australia, and the electorate that I represent absolutely needs to have the cheap energy that is going to come from Australia really developing its renewable energy resource, and not just using it, but being the leader in the technology of it and being the leader in the export of it through the hydrogen industry. I mean, this is how we make sure that we stay ahead of the curve, how we make sure that we are not being left behind.
Right.
And regional Australia will miss out, just as the rest of the country will, if our economy gets left behind by not walking down this path.
So, and everyone understands there are opportunities for the regions, and no one's suggesting let's punish them unduly, but it's a long road to get to 2050. We don't know what it's going to entail. There could obviously be costs for Australia, for other countries. Why should the regions be exempt from that?
Well, there are opportunities for the regions, and obviously we need to be managing this process. But you know, right now we don't. You know, we really have nothing from the government about how it sees itself getting to.
We don't have much from Labor either.
Yeah, well, we're not governing, Tom,
right.
And we've made it. But can I just answer that? We've made it really clear that before the next election, before the next opportunity that we have to be governing in this country, that we spell out, and we will, a clear pathway from this moment through to getting net zero emissions by 2050.
But just on that principle in terms of the regions, are they special, or is every Australian deserving a right of, well, we won't put undue cost onto you? Because if we say there can never be a cost ever for the regions, and there is a cost overall, that goes on to every other voter, and they'll say, well, why am I punished because I live in a city?
Oh, look, I mean, well, I do, coming from regional Australia, feel the special nature of regional Australia, but every Australian citizen stands equal, and we need to be making sure that we have a position which is fair for all, and one that can be of benefit to all. But at the heart of that means making sure that we have an economy which is modern, which is seeking to be ahead of the curve. And that has always been the case. I mean, we've been making this case for a very long time now, and in part it obviously is about Australia playing its part in the global challenge of dealing with the question of climate change. But a large part of this has been making sure that we have an economy which is ahead of the curve, which takes the advantages of it, and that's particularly through the development of renewable energy.